The big question this week was who would INEOS Britannia choose as their opponent in the Louis Vuitton semi-finals. The answer came yesterday: Alinghi Red Bull Racing. This meant that this team, Rossa, Prada, Pirelli, would face American Magic. The British were also allowed to choose which match they wanted to kick off with. They chose the second of the day, which in turn meant the Italians would take the first race. So as we start the semi-finals, it's Rossa, Prada, Pirelli that opens the proceedings in the first to 5 win series. It's going to be an interesting one. But while the Italians have been forced to respond rather than lead, their pairing with the Americans could pose a bigger risk to the British team. If it's a tough match between Rossa and American Magic, whoever comes out on top may be more battle-hardened as they head towards the finals. On the other hand, it's no secret that American Magic are facing some issues at the moment. One of the biggest is the current loss of their co-helmsman Paul Goodison. After a very confused few days where the team seemed reluctant to clarify the situation, Goodison put out a statement on social media last night where he said he'd broken 5 ribs after falling down a hatch when moving the mainsail after racing. He said he struggled to breathe after the impact, but he doesn't say whether he punctured a lung. Recovering from broken ribs can take between weeks and months, which paints a tricky picture for Goodison and the team. His current replacement, Lucas Calabresi, is an experienced and competent helmsman and has spent many hours on board the AC-75. But my understanding is he was standing in for Tom Slingsby when he was away on Sail GP. If that's the case, it may be that the relationship between Lucas and Tom may not be as strong as it was between him and Paul. So today, day 1, and there's already a great deal on the line for all 4 teams. As if American Magic weren't under enough pressure, a problem with the cyclor system meant that they had to ask for a 15-minute delay. Teams are allowed to ask for just one of these in each round. To have to do so early is not ideal. At 20 seconds before the start, Rossa were forced to tack off onto port, making them late for the line. American Magic executed a perfect start, then tacked to cover. From there, the Americans covered them and pinned the Italians to the ropes all the way up the first beat. At the top gate, each took opposite marks with just 3 seconds between them. On the first cross, American Magic had pulled out a bigger lead, which by the bottom had grown to 20 seconds. Seeing more breeze out on the left-hand side, they worked this part of the course, before covering Rossa all the way up the second beat. The Americans were in full control. But a wobbly mark rounding by them scrubbed off some of their lead. Then, with the benefit of some more breeze coming in from behind, the Italians closed the gap right down. At the bottom gate, Rossa were just 4 seconds behind and pulled off a superb mark rounding to tack away onto port. By the time the two came back together, Rossa was on starboard and took the lead. And from there, the race went one way, a win to Rossa. But it was close, just 7 seconds.
Yeah, we didn't have a great start, quite of a bad attack, the first one. And we are a little bit on the back foot at the beginning, but the boys did a fantastic job, pushing hard and never giving up.
There was no engagement in the pre-start at all for this match. Indeed, by the start, both boats were late, and the Swiss were well to windward, and they were able to take early control of the match as they covered the British up the first beat. Taking opposite marks at the first gate, the British went to the right-hand side of the course. When they came back at Alinghi on starboard, they did so at pace, forcing the Swiss to jibe and then taking the lead. By the bottom gate, the gap had opened rapidly to 28 seconds as INEOS extended her lead. The second upwind leg delivered more of the same as the gap grew to 42 seconds. On the downwind leg, a very slow jibe by Alinghi made matters even worse for them as the distance grew to over 1 kilometre. From then on, it was a totally one-sided affair, with INEOS Britannia taking their first win of the semi-finals. An even start saw American Magic to leeward and Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli to windward. But the Americans were keen to squeeze the Italians out, which is precisely what they did. Luna Rossa were forced to tack away, allowing the Americans to control the first beat. On the downwind leg they hung in there until the last few metres, when a poor mark rounding led the Italians to slip through to take the lead by 6 seconds. From there, American Magic were forced to duck on the next cross, but the lead changed back again as American Magic forced the same back on Luna Rossa. And then it was back to the Italians, who rounded the second windward gate by 20 seconds. Meanwhile, the breeze had dropped slightly to 9 knots, making life trickier for both teams. And while the distance between the pair on the final beat was around 200 metres, Luna Rossa were taking no chances, covering at every opportunity. And by the final gate, it was easy to see why. There was just 13 seconds between them. A puff on the last downwind leg brought American Magic back into the game, just as they had in the previous match. Just 70 metres separated them. All it would take was one fluff, but none came from either team, and Luna Rossa took the win, their second of the day. If you're looking to watch one race today, this is the one. A proper match race and confirmation that this pairing could prove to be very close indeed.
I think the Americans were not slow today. I think everything was going in moments, and we picked some good shifts. We execute some maneuvers better than them. Still not at our best, but probably also they were not selling at their best. I think that was super hard conditions for all of us, and it's hard to say who did a better job, but probably we did a better job in some moments of the race.
Difficult day out there today, Tom. You seem to be struggling through the manoeuvres a little bit today.
Honestly, I think our manoeuvres were a lot better than where they were a week ago. I think we've made some improvements there. There's times there where the wind got really light, and to be honest, we had the wrong sails up. We thought the wind was going to increase. Luna Rossa had more sail area up than us. We were expecting the wind to increase, and we were happy being a bit smaller, but in the end it was the wrong call. We had a smaller main, smaller jib on than them both races, and so that's not helping us in those light air manoeuvres, and so that's a bit of a mistake on our end.
You had two incredibly close races. I just wonder whether you come ashore slightly disheartened that you lost by such a small amount, or encouraged that you're right in there.
If anyone knows me, coming in after 2 losses, I usually am breaking things. I'd be very upset, and I am upset because we made mistakes today. We could have won those races, and so I am upset with myself, and we can improve there. But also to think of where we were a week ago, we were really struggling for speed, struggling for manoeuvres. We lost Goody. We've had to put in Lucas, who has only a few days of sailing in this boat, and to think of where we were today, it's actually a pretty good outcome. The boat speed felt better, the manoeuvres felt a bit better, and Lucas is doing an unbelievable job. He had a practice race against New Zealand where they were a long way in front of us, and then today he's in there. We're in a full match race with Jimmy Spithill and Francesco Bruni, and Lucas Calabresi's in there sort of taking him on. So my hat's off to him, and he's only going to get better from here as well. So not happy with 2 losses, but excited about what's coming tomorrow.
Just on that communication between the two of you, just paint us a bit of a picture of how hard that is, and what can you do about it? I mean, when you knew that it was going to be the two of you for the next few races, did you jump in the simulator and then think, right, we've got to crack in as many hours as we can? How did you deal with it? How did you deal with that communication?
Yeah, we did jump in the simulator. We've spent a lot of time in the simulator. Lucas is like a sponge. He's asking a million questions, and he's sort of just taking it all on. He's sort of 2 eyes, 2 ears and 1 mouth. He's sort of just soaking it all in. He's doing an unbelievable job, but a lot of the things, I mean, Goody's done over 70 days, and Goody and I have over 70 days in this boat of communicating with each other, different scenarios. And then Lucas, a lot of the stuff he's going to have to learn on the fly. And to think of how he sailed today, it's really exciting because he's only going to get better from here.
The start of the last race was a messy, nerve-jangling affair. The drop in the breeze had delayed the start, and now it was clear how tricky things had got.
This is the umpires. Boundary penalty Switzerland. Boundary penalty Switzerland.
When the start sequence got underway, the Swiss had dropped off their foils and had got a penalty for being outside the boundary. Then, just before the start, the British got close to slipping off their foils too. By the start, both were up and running again, but only just. By the top gate, INEOS had taken a grip of the match and were leading by 1 minute and 18 seconds. Nothing much changed from there, and the British went on to win their second race. Dylan, first of all, well done, congratulations. That's exactly how you'd want to start it, I'm sure, but quite big margins that you won by. What do you take away from today?
I think we'll be reflecting on ourselves and our performance. We were a bit disappointed with the start in the first race, so we'll be debriefing that with Ian Williams. I'm sure he'll tell us what we did wrong. Just focusing on where we can keep finding race time.
The second start was a bit tricky as well, wasn't it? But that looked like it was more to do with the drop in breeze. It all went a bit funky at the start.
Yeah, the breeze went really up and down for the second race. We weren't sure we were going to pass the wind limit because we had sort of 4 or 5 knots at times, up to 10, 11. But good job by Lee to save that tack at the start. Otherwise, I thought we were going to get a boundary penalty.
Now, when you're sitting in the debrief this evening, what will you be most proud about, most pleased about today in your performance?
I think just coming out and delivering some consistent boat speed and boat handling. I don't think it was about being a hero today. It was just trying to be solid, link up the pressures, and feels like we're able to get our heads out more and we're sailing the boat more consistently.
Is it harder also in a way when you've got, I wouldn't call it a mismatch because it wouldn't be fair to call it a mismatch, but such a difference in performance that it's difficult to keep the pressure on yourselves?
I don't think so. I think we've seen Alinghi been very strong at the start like today, and they certainly have showed a very strong sort of high mode upwind, especially in the conditions today. So I don't think they're not that no slouch.
Well, that was an interesting day. What do you take away from a day like today, Freddie?
For me, we're looking at ourselves more than Alinghi, and we set the bar reasonably high for ourselves as we left the round robins, and it was about picking up that baton where we left it and stepping on again. So we're very much looking at ourselves. We're super aware that the scoreboard resets to 0 for everyone, so it's a restart. So it's our biggest day of the America's Cup so far. So to get 2 race wins is big, and picking, as I said, resetting the standards from where we left round robin 2, and I think we've done that in terms of boat performance and communication and race day execution. So that's what we're happy about.
In some ways, I guess it could be said that because you had the choice, in some ways you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because on the one hand, it's understandable to pick the lowest ranked team.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, surely the risk is that we see what we saw today with the other two, have a whole load of close racing, and you end up meeting a tougher opponent later on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really follow too much the Prada and America's battles, but it looked super close, and they're getting battle hard and battle sharpened. But our first race against Alinghi, trying to escape their cover on that first upwind, and the conversation with the afterguard was superb. And that's actually the biggest positive I take away from today is obviously Ben and Dylan is a fresh combination. And you chuck Lee and Bledden into that mix, and being tucked away in my little Cyclor cockpit, I'm solely relying on their communication to build a picture of the racecourse in my head so I know what's coming up next. And they paint the picture so well that I can see what's happening in the next 2 minutes of the racecourse. And then therefore we can judge our power efforts moving forwards and make the big moments really big and know when we can step our efforts down. And that's what we take from their amazing communication. And today on the first upwind against Alinghi in the first race was as good as I've ever heard that. And even though we were behind, no panic. And even when we were ahead, the tone didn't change. And that's what you're looking for.
And you can come and tell us about it, which is even better.
And I can come and tell you about it, which is a pleasure.
Overall, today was a day where the score didn't fully reflect what happened. Yes, 2 teams had clean scorelines, but while one pairing had been a clean sweep, the other was a much closer affair. We'll do it all again tomorrow. See you then.